Hello and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emmy Cardinale, and this is my podcast where I talk about what I've been watching or rewatching normally once a week. This is the first episode of mine that you stumble upon and you enjoy it. Please feel free to follow me wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get notified when I upload a new episode. Like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in. It really does mean a lot. I have some introduction stuff about the podcast at the beginning, but if you want to skip my intro, timestamps are in the description. You can just jump straight to when I start talking about the Real Housewives of Rhode Island. So, as the title suggests, this episode is going to be my thoughts on the Real Housewives of Rhode Island season 1. The plan for the podcast right now, I am recording this Thursday evening, so it should be out sometime Friday. And then I'm going to record one final Love Island season 8 episode after the finale. So that should be out sometime early next week. And then next Thursday, I will be recording my first Big Brother 28 episode. And every week going forward on Thursdays after somebody goes home, I will be recording an episode about the entire week to have episodes about Big Brother out on like Fridays, hopefully. So that's the plan. Maybe Fridays or Saturdays, but they'll be out before the next HOH episode because the HOH episodes air on Sundays. But I think that I'm unemployed now, so I don't think that it's going to take me a very long time to get the episodes edited. So I do think that I can have like, if I record Thursday or record Friday, I think I can get the episodes out like the same day or like the next day. Anyways, so that's the plan for the podcast going forward. Since I will be talking about Big Brother, and that's a lot to cover, especially because I do watch live feeds and I will be talking about live feeds in my podcast episodes. I anticipate being very busy this summer, but I am unemployed. So in my free time, I might, along with the Big Brother coverage, every once in a while have like a second podcast episode that week. If there's any show that you would like me to cover, feel free to comment down below. I'm open to anything. I have a lot of time on my hands. So that's kind of the plan for the next few episodes. Let me just jump straight into the Real Housewives of Rhode Island. So I did take notes, but full disclosure, this isn't going to be like an episode by episode recap. I'm going to kind of track like the arcs of the season. Okay. So little background on me. I am a member of, I was going to say a member of Bachelor Nation, but that sounds so serious. I don't mean it to sound super serious, but like I have been watching Bachelor for quite a while. So the reason that I watched Rhode Island was because of Ashley Like I've never really watched this is I think the first that's not true. I watched all of Potomac season 1 and I started season 2. Um but besides the Real Housewives of Potomac season 1, I might have actually gone through season 2 and then started season 3. I don't remember. But I've never really gotten super into the Housewives, and the main reason I got into Potomac is because I did grow up in Potomac, and it was really fun to try to to know where they were. Like, sorry, not to go on a tangent, but in the season 1 finale of the Real Housewives of Potomac, they have like a dinner where there's a fight, and the restaurant where they are having this dinner is where I and like my prom party went before prom. Like we had a nice little dinner at this restaurant before prom, and they're just on the Real Housewives of Potomac beefing at that restaurant. Like it was so trippy to me. Anyways, my point is I'm not super well versed in the Housewives. Okay, I have seen all of Vanderpump. I think there's something about now watching the Real Housewives of Rhode Island all the way through. Like, interestingly enough, with the Real Housewives of Potomac, I think because there was a layer of relatability in the fact that I did grow up there, it didn't feel. Also, the Real Housewives of Potomac, sorry to go on this tangent, but it's a really interesting show for me as somebody who grew up in Potomac because the Real Housewives of Potomac is about like the black like the wealthy black community of Potomac, and I am not a member of the black wealthy community of Potomac. So it was a very interesting experience because it's not like a community that I'm a part of or I've had much experience with. And also, but there's also a level of but there's also a level of familiarity in the fact that, like, I do know the area. So Real Housewives of Potomac was very interesting to me, for that reason. And I should finish it. I should get back on my Zoom and watch the Real Housewives of Potomac. You know what's so funny? Sorry, I'll stop talking about the Real Housewives of Potomac in a hot second. But I remember I was on my high school newspaper, and I remember when it was announced they were doing that, like, somebody wrote an article about it for my high school newspaper. Anyways, what am I even talking about? Back to the Real Housewives of Rhode Island. So I went into this season knowing Ashley I, and interestingly enough, is I think she did a really interesting she did a really interesting job, and I did enjoy her. Like, I do have a soft spot for her. Like, I've seen a lot of the Bravo people thinking she's boring and this, that, and the other, and, like, I'm like, "Please, she's my friend." And the funny thing is she's not even, like, somebody who I really ride hard for from Bachelor Nation, but the fact that I, like, know her history. Anyways, let me just, get into the cast of characters, and then I'll get into Ashley I, because she doesn't come into like, we meet a bunch of people first, and then she comes in, like, halfway through the first episode. She's, like, a main character, but, we meet quite a few other characters first. It's not like the Ashley I show. She's very much, like, part of the ensemble in a really interesting way. Anyways, so of the cast of characters, some people come in later, like Rula doesn't come in until episode 2, but in the first episode, we meet Liz. She, like, is in the cannabis industry. She literally has a cat named Ganja who, like, I'm pretty sure it's a Bengal or some kind of exotic cat. Like, it's not just, like, a domestic short hair, okay? She definitely bought this cat named Ganja who, like, just she walks sometimes, and Ganja walks to, like, a little dock that she has and then walks back, which, like, very beautiful cat, very funny name for a cat. Anyways, she and her husband have been together for a while. I don't know how long, but she's a stepmom to his 3 kids. She became a stepmom to them, like, basically overnight, and raised them because their biological mother, we don't get much detail into that, and I don't really know if we need to, but, like, she raised them for the majority. Like, they had full custody from my understanding. I don't know if the biological mother has come out. I don't know, but the point is she did have a big part in raising these 3 girls, which is important for something later because Rula's kind of an asshole about that. But anyways, I really like Liz. She's kind of like the queen bee, I feel like is the vibe. She's very intense, but also really funny. I really like Liz. Okay. I really enjoy watching her. Then the next person I have written in my notes is probably my favorite of the housewives, and that's Alicia. I'm obsessed with Alicia. She wasn't like my favorite off of the first episode. I didn't really have a favorite off of the first episode. Like, I have to be honest, I was kind of getting my bearings. I was like, I don't know. I didn't have a solid opinion on anybody based off of the first episode or even the first few episodes. Uh, but my appreciation for Alicia grew. Like, I find her to be very charming, to be very endearing. I like her dynamic with the other women. She has a restaurant that, like, her husband started, but she came up with, like, a lot, or, like, basically, she's kinda, if you watched Hacks, got Deborah Vance out of her pizza place. It's called Pizza Mama, and she came up with a lot of the ideas, but she doesn't have ownership of it, and this does come up later, okay? Then there's Joellen, who is kind of in the inner circle. She's friends with Liz. She's friends with Alicia. She's friends with Rosie, she's friends with Kelsey, who we meet later. She's like, and Joellen's a very interesting character because I don't really like her. I have to be quite honest. I don't really like how she is with the other women. I think she just gets involved in a lot of things that I'm like, why is this your business? And there are some moments where I'm like, okay, I do think maybe like the situation with Rula and Rula's husband and Joellen getting involved in that, and like in that regard, I'm not against Joellen, but I just feel like there are moments where it's like, what, you didn't need to stick your nose in this. Not everything, like, I don't know. She feels very like into the, and I understand it's probably really good for like reality TV, and I think she does like her part very well. And I think she does have an interesting backstory, and like I do have empathy for like the things she went through in her childhood and all of these things. But there's just something about the way that Joe Ellen, like, I wouldn't want to be friends with her. Okay, the way she like gets involved in people's business and then like I'm just very much of the belief that like not everything has to be your business. Okay, not everything. And I'm not saying like if you see something, don't say something. I'm not saying that. Okay, I just think that there, and again, I also understand that it's reality TV. I feel like I have a hard time with shows like Housewives because I watch reality TV with like I try so hard to have empathy for the people that I'm watching and like understand the interpersonal dynamics. I think like it's easier to have grace for people when I'm watching them like in like a weird environment like Big Brother or like Love Island or The Bachelor where it's like you're in it's not your real life. The Housewives are so interesting to me because I'm like I'm not saying that there's not an added layer of like you're on a production and that adds to the emotional instability, but there is a layer of like this is supposedly more of what you like more this is your real life. So it's harder for me to not have like and I still am trying not to, but it's hard for me to not have judgment about the way these people are carrying themselves when it's like this is supposedly just you in your day-to-day life, you know? Like this isn't you when you're locked away or you're starving like on Survivor or something where I'm like or even Love Island where I'm like I really don't like the way you're conducting yourself and the way you're treating these women or like men, the way you're treating your fellow islander, but there is maybe something about like maybe you're just in a weird environment, you know? Like there is a little bit more of grace and understanding and like also just like I've never been in that position of being like uh, I don't know, it's just a different experience, you know? Whereas this I'm like, okay, this is just how you interact interpersonally. I don't know. I'm overthinking it. I'm overthinking it. I'm sorry. I'm jumping all over the place. Okay. I do think Joe Ellen is good TV, I guess. I just think honestly, here's the thing. Okay. Going into season 2, it was announced that Liz is not going to be on season 2. And that is sad to me. Okay. I would have rather they get rid of Joe Ellen. I don't care for Joe Ellen. I also don't really care for Rula, but she also was like not really in this season very much, and I do feel like Rula at least has an interesting storyline. I I don't really know. I'm very sad to see Liz go. But let me just get. I've barely gotten into anything. Okay, sorry. I'm going through the cast of characters. Then there's Kelsey, who I also don't. I really don't care for Kelsey. But honestly, the main reason I don't care for Kelsey is just because I don't find anything about her storyline compelling or interesting. Like I'm not interested in Kelsey literally at all. Like there's so much discourse about Kelsey's relationship because she's like been dating this guy for like 10 years and lives with him and like he pays for everything and also it's somewhat of an open relationship. Rosie, who we meet later, calls her a polygamist and it's like she's not married to either of them. It's not polygamy, but like there's a lot of discourse about like that. And to me, I don't even care about like if she's seeing other people. If you, like for me, it's like you've been dating for like 10 years and he is Liz's age. That's how Kelsey and Liz know each other because this guy is Liz's age and Liz is the oldest on the cast and there's a whole storyline later where she's working on wheat gummies for menopause. Like she is older and I'm not like in any way saying anything negative about Liz, but like the fact that Kelsey has been in a 10-year relationship with this man who could probably be her grandfather is very deeply uncomfortable to me. So I'm like, I don't care if you have another boyfriend. I don't like that he's your boyfriend. They break up, thank God. We never see this guy, and like, I genuinely don't like that. I don't like that. All this discourse on Love Island about Bryce and Trinity and that age gap. I'm like, can we please like focus on the real like I don't like this guy. I don't like this guy, and even like the fact that like they break up and he keeps paying for things. It's like that's nice, I guess, in theory, but it's just like I don't like the level of like I understand that being financially independent is very difficult in this day and age. Okay. I'm not saying that like you can't rely on people and like I'm not saying that. There's just something specifically icky about the layers of control in this relationship where I'm like, he's I don't like it. And she wants a family and she wants kids and she wants to be serious with somebody and he doesn't want that. I really don't like this guy and I know nothing about him except all the things I know about him and I just don't like him. But anyways, more on Kelsey later. Then there's Rosie, who she's kind of an outsider as well. She's friends with Ashley I. That's kind of how Ashley I is integrated into the group. And Rosie is actually one of one of the housewives I like a little bit more. Um, I do like her relationship with Ashley I also really like the fact that if somebody works for the news or is some kind of journalist, I'm always going to be that's always going to interest me and I'm always gonna be I like that about Rosie. And I also just think there are a lot of moments where they're so hard on Rosie and I'm like, literally for what reason? It's so intense to me the way Kelsey and Joellen attack Rosie and have all these critiques of her and her job and all the rumors. And it's just I don't understand why you care so much. Unless you are her coworker, why do you care about why she left her previous employer? Unless it was genuinely a horrible scandal, but it's oh, she slept with this person. It's okay. And I'm not saying that you can't I mean, I was gonna say I'm not saying you can't not want people in your circle if they're unfaithful, but it's not even about that because a lot of these women are either yeah, they're rumors. I think almost every single person has some kind of infidelity allegation at some point or another. It's everybody. It's Liz and Dino and Joellen had swinging allegations, and it's everybody has some kind of undercurrent of maybe not super faithful or oh, you've had your rough patches. So it's not about that. It's a weird it's so weird. I don't understand their beef with Rosie. Okay, I really don't. But anyways, I'm going through all of these things. There is tension with Rosie from the beginning. Okay, we find out that in a dinner or at a party or something that happened before they started filming that Rosie went to at Joellen's house. Joellen had said some unsavory things about Rosie that she heard behind her back. And she literally at some point is you said that children wouldn't want to be around me or something like that, something very intense. Okay. From the beginning, Rosie's kind of on the outs. She's not in the in group. At a little brunch thing that they're doing because Rosie is a news anchor, as I've said, and she also has a little show that I don't a travel show. I don't know, but she's partnering with a fancy brunch thing. So that's kind of one of the first events that they have together. And at this brunch, Ashley's there, and that's where she meets Joellen and Alicia. Rosie and Ashley knew each other before. I don't know how long they were friends before the show started, but they knew each other before, so that's why Ashley's there, Joanne's there, Alicia's there. I can't remember. Liz is not here, nor is Kelsey. Liz might be here actually. I can't remember if Liz is at this brunch. I'm really sorry. But basically, at this brunch, they're playing Never Have I Ever, and Rosie says something "Never have I ever been a polygamist," and then she's like, "Isn't that what Kelsey's situation is?" And it becomes a whole thing. And in Rosie's defense, she was not the first person to bring up Kelsey and Kelsey's relationship. They Joellen brings up Kelsey and says Kelsey's going through a hard time because basically when we are introduced to Kelsey, she's been in this relationship, but she's unsure of where she wants to go because she wants a commitment and this guy is not going to give that to her, right? She's in a tough spot, but also this is all she's known for 10 years and she likes being taken care of. And Kelsey's in a limbo when we first meet Kelsey. Okay. So it's not this thing that Rosie just out of nowhere. I do think I understand whatever you're on a reality show, this escalated to a very unnecessary degree because it's not like she was saying something heinous about you. I mean, I don't know, maybe being in an open relationship is super scandalous. Maybe to me, I'm just okay, that's not a big deal. She's not asking if you have a secret that he has a secret family that you know nothing about, and you're living a double life, or he's living a double life. It's like, is she's just saying that you're not monogamous, okay? It's 2026. Who gives a fuck? Like, to me, the way that this became this thing of like, how dare she talk about my relationship? It's like she was just asking a question, and if you're embarrassed of it, then like, that's something deeper within you. I don't think she was saying any. I mean, she didn't say it with a like, do whatever you want to do, but I also don't think she was saying it with like a huge stigma of like, that's disgusting, or it's like, it's just like this thing where I don't know, because I've never been in an open relationship, but to me, it's like, I mean, I've never been in a relationship, period. But to me, it's like something like that. It's like, who cares? I was in an open relationship and I felt some kind of shame. Like, I just don't understand Kelsey's reaction to this, because it's like, you're not doing anything wrong. He's not doing anything wrong. If anything, this is significantly like more ethical and communicative than like all these other women who allegedly, Liz has rumors that she's been in something with Dino, which comes up later. Dino, who, whatever. It's like all of these situations. I'm like, who cares? Who cares that you supposedly? She gets so offended, and I think it's because she's feeling unfulfilled in her relationship, so she's sensitive about it. But it's like she gets so mad at Rosie, as if Rosie's doing something like horrendous by asking a question, when it's like, you could just say yes or you could just say no. And it's like, if she feels a certain way about the way you're living your life, then that's on her. Like, yeah, it became this thing where I'm like, did it not? It didn't need to be this thing. Okay, either yes, you're monogamous, or no, you're not. Who cares? I feel like in getting defensive and being like, really angry about it, it's like, that's just worse. Okay, if you were like, yeah, we're not monogamous, I date somebody sometimes, we don't live together, and I like, he lives in Miami 6 months of the year or something, she says at the beginning. So it's like, you're not together a lot of the time. Okay, that's what works for you. He from the beginning didn't want to commit to you like long term, so like, it would make sense if you want to have a family one day and he doesn't want that, that you guys are not in this like super committed place where it's like a scandalous thing that you're not monogamous. It's like, oh, it's not deep enough for her to have gotten so mad at Rosie about this. Okay, an interesting thing about Ashley comes in, and at this brunch, sorry, I don't, this is, see, this is what I told you I was going to do. Because Kelsey's not even at this brunch, she just finds out about it later. But at the brunch, Ashley is introduced to them. She gives her little backstory about how she met her husband on The Bachelor. She met him on Bachelor in Paradise, and it's so funny the way that they like breeze through their story, because they have a very complicated relationship, like on the show. It was so funny, like the story. She's like, yeah, I met him and it was love at first sight, and now however many years later, and it's like, it was actually a very long road. Okay, she met him on Bachelor in Paradise. I don't remember what season it was, but they were on one season of Bachelor in Paradise together. He was freshly out of this his season of The Bachelorette, and he says that he wasn't super available. Okay, Ashley had already seen a photo of Jared, or she had, from like a date that he did, whatever. Because before going into, before, like, when a season's being filmed, sometimes the contestants will be like, will know of the men from the season that's airing currently. Because Paradise very often is filmed like right when The Bachelorette's airing, or whatever. The point is that she had seen Jared, and from the beginning, she like really was honed in on Jared. Jared's heart wasn't super in it, and he just wasn't really forthcoming, literally not interested in her at all. And then they became friends, and apparently, like, beyond the show, they were like flirty and friends for a very long time. Then they're on another season of Bachelor in Paradise. He's even more distant. It's very back and forth. Nick Viall is like, Jared will never be with you. You will never be with Jared. Okay. They remain friends, but it's nothing romantic, for a long time. She goes on Bachelor Winter Games. He goes on Bachelor in Paradise Australia. On Australia, apparently, I didn't watch that season. I don't really care. But he went on Bachelor in Paradise. Maybe it was in Australia. I think it was Australia. It was some foreign Bachelor in Paradise. Apparently, from what I recall of the way they told the story, so it might be biased, he really did not have a good time. He barely explored. He didn't want to be there. Okay. Ashley, meanwhile, goes on Bachelor Winter Games. It was like a one season thing, and she meets a guy named Kevin from The Bachelorette Canada, I believe. Was he from The Bachelor Canada? He's Canadian. But I think he was on The Bachelor. I think he was on The Bachelorette Canada. I don't think he was in the US version. It doesn't really matter. The point is she meets this Kevin guy. I think he was from anyways, she meets Kevin, she starts dating Kevin, and that's her first real relationship. Ashley's whole story on her time on The Bachelor and then Bachelor in Paradise, but she's never been in a relationship. She was a virgin. She was saving herself for her first relationship, not for marriage. She just didn't want to like have sex until she was in a relationship. So she had yet to have sex, and that was a big part of her storyline. So anyway, she starts dating Kevin. It's a very brief relationship, and then very soon after she wakes up with Kevin, she and Jerry get together, and then we find out months later. They tell the story on like I don't know if it's still up on YouTube, but they did a whole YouTube series thing telling their story about like all of this and like the behind the scenes and how flirty they were and how much he like did like her for a while, but he was like not in the right headspace or whatever. He confesses his feelings to her when she's in a relationship with somebody else. She and the other guy break up, and then Jared and then she and Jared got together, and they've been together ever since. But it was a very messy, long road. Okay, there's a lot out there about their dynamic, but it was just so funny how fast it was breezed by, and also so funny to watch people analyze their dynamic who don't know all the history because I'm like, you guys don't even know. People are like, he's so focused on the coffee shop, he doesn't like her. I'm like, uh, I think she's been. Hi, sorry, forgive my change in hairstyle. I was worried my audio didn't work and I was gonna call it quits for the night, but my audio did work. So I'm picking up where I left. I was like gonna scrap the whole thing, and I'm like, I just talked for 30 minutes, so I'm just leaving my hair like this. But that's why my hair changed halfway through. Anyways, sorry for being dramatic. I genuinely I had some audio issues last week, and I troubleshooted it, and I realized that, like, the setting was not the way it was supposed to. Let me keep going. So what I was saying is I think, like, all of the discourse about Ashley, and Jared's dynamic, I'm like, they've already heard it, okay? They've heard it so many times. They were so rocky. I genuinely, all things considered, I feel like they're really solid. I feel like they're fine. I understand the stress of, like, the coffee shop, and I do think they have some tension, but I genuinely think they're okay. Like, I think they've been through enough. I think they have a really solid foundation. Like, of all the bachelor couples, I really do think that they're a good one specifically because in terms of compatibility, because they were friends for like a very long time and cared for each other very deeply before it became anything romantic. And I do think it was very messy how they got together and like that's neither here nor there. Anyways, let me move on. I'm genuine. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm such a disaster. Anyways, let me keep going. What I was saying earlier about like I don't understand why Kelsey got so upset. Like at some point when they're playing Never Have I Ever and she's like, never have I ever been a polygamist. And then she's like, isn't that what it's called when you have like two boyfriends? Isn't that what Kelsey is going on? And then Joanne's like, I think you should just ask her. And Rosie in her confessionals is like, I'm a reporter. Like, sorry that I'm nosy. I'm just asking questions. I'm a reporter. What would you expect from me? And I liked that. I genuinely really liked that. In like the first or second episode, we are introduced to Joellen's mom. And from the beginning, her mom is like a very weird individual. Maybe weird's a bit too strong, but like I really didn't like Joellen's mom. She's like, I'm here to fulfill my quota or my responsibility or whatever as like to babysit when they're doing like a 4th of July party or something. And from the beginning, there's very clearly tension with Joellen and her mom. We find out later in the season, and this was a moment where I was like, I really hadn't liked Joellen up until this point. This did give me some like empathy for her. I'm not a Joellen apologist, nor am I particularly a big fan of hers, but I did feel for her in this situation with her mom because I think it, obviously not that I've been through this, but I do think there's something as you get older and you're an adult when you're like I wish that I was received with, like, some more kindness, like I was a child, and again, I did not experience what Joellen experienced, nor like, I'm not saying this to, like, but I do think there's just something about growing up when you look back at, like, the way you were judged as a teenager, where you're like, "I was a kid." I don't know, it was really, really sad, like, she explains that her mom sent her away to like camps for like troubled teenagers like multiple times. Like, and she confides in this to Alicia, who's like, "Yeah, you were gone for like a year. Like, I didn't know what happened." And she explains that like it was very intense situations. One of the times her mom gave partial custody to the state, and the reason that like she left that facility was because they were like, "We need like full custody." The state was basically like, "Okay, if she's going to remain in this facility, like she's like, we'll take custody," and she didn't want to lose custody, so that's why Joellen went home. But it's like it's really sad, and that is really difficult. And even just from what we've seen about like how her mom treats her now as an adult, I do think that there's like some issue there. I just I feel like in some ways maybe Joellen is breaking the cycle, but I feel like in a lot of ways she's not. Like I would wish for Joellen, who has experienced this, and I'm not saying anything about her parenting because I don't really know, nor is that, but I just think like, as a human being, when you've experienced like this kind of pain as a child, and like you've, I just wish that she could be a little bit like, and I'm not saying you need to be like polite and roll over, and like she can't be feisty or like have her. I'm not saying she can't like have her personality and like uh, be herself, and like she needs. I'm not saying that. I don't know. There's like a anger that I feel like Joellen approaches things with, where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Not. I think I have to be honest. I know a lot of these women are like not politically aligned with me, but Joelle and I have seen some things, and I'm just like, I don't understand how you could be so passionate about like, and I understand that's a cognitive dissonance a lot of people experience, but it's like you went through like really difficult things as a child, and clearly that impacted you. And like your mother at some point talks about how like you were behaving, and you're like, but I was the child in the scenario and you were the parent. And it's like, I don't, maybe channel some of that, like, care for children into the policies you believe in, but whatever. We are introduced to Rula in the second episode, I believe, and Rula is genuinely like one of my least favorite of the housewives, mostly because her storyline like genuinely frustrates me, and I also just like don't find her super entertaining. Like I have to be honest, the Rula storyline, it just drags on. But I will say something that I do think is really powerful. Maybe powerful is a bit too strong, but something that I think is like uh, that really stuck out to me about the Rula storyline is I'm like, oh, this is another example of how dangerous AI is. Because what do you mean this guy's like cheating on her and there's video evidence, but she keeps being like, that's AI. You can make things up now. That's AI. It's like, Jesus, it's like AI is so evil. It's so evil that now people can get away with things that like it pissed me off. It pissed me off, and it's just like I I don't know. At the end of the day, my main feeling, I don't know why I'm saying this like this is my conclusion. It's not. I just had this thought because I'm like a lot of the I'm like all of this tension between the women, and so much of it just boils down to how much the men suck. Because even like Rosie gets really mad at or Kelsey gets really mad at Rosie later, and then Rosie's like, "You suck dick for a career," or whatever. And it's just like this thing where it's like at the end of the day, if Kelsey hadn't been, and I guess I know she made her choice, whatever. Like I'm not saying that she was like, I just do think there's something icky about like this man who I've talked about, who like she's been in a relationship with for like a decade. There is something icky about that. I'm like, if she had her independence and had like been her own person, then like all of these things go back to like the how fucked up the men are. All of the tension with Rula, it's because she's defending her man, and it's like, for what reason? For what reason? This man sucks. Like, I don't understand her loyalty to him in any capacity. I really don't. It's like he seems whatever. Literally from the beginning, it is introduced that like Rula, there's whispers about him, her husband, Ryan. Then it's like, oh, something happened last year, but not. And then she's mad at Joellen this whole time because Joellen apparently has been sticking her nose in this. And this is kind of what I was trying to talk about earlier, where it's like, I understand Joellen, like, wanting to say her piece and be involved, but it's like at the end of the day, some things are just like, and I'm not saying, again, if you know somebody's cheating, just like let it lie. But it's like if I was in this situation, I would have like told Rula once, and then if Rula doesn't want to hear it, like at that point, you can only do what you can do. Like you're giving her evidence, and like if you're like, there's evidence, she's like, that's AI. Then what are you gonna do? Like you add nothing. You say she's gonna believe. She needs to make that decision in her own time. So it's like Joellen continuously like getting involved, and then Rula just getting more mad. It's like so much of the infighting, I'm like, you guys are so much more mad at each other than you are at the fact that this, like, it became so frustrating, genuinely so frustrating. From the beginning in the episode where we meet Rula and she's talking about the situation, she mentions that when you produce the kids, it's different. And Liz takes this personally because she's been a stepmother to her three daughters for basically their entire lives. She gets really upset by this, and I do understand this. I do understand this because, and I also think obviously this is them producing the show well, but there's literally like in that same episode, Liz talking about like her story with her children and how she met her husband and like just very quickly became a stepmother, and like she didn't expect her life would go this way, but like she loves them, and they're like, you know, so important to her life and everything. And then in like later in the episode, Rula makes that comment, and I don't know if she meant it that way. I also like, we don't know, it's not made explicitly clear the custody situation, but it's like at the end of the day, if Liz has some kind of custody of the children, it really doesn't matter if she produced them. Like she raised them to some extent. Like maybe she has custody, maybe she doesn't, but it's like at that point, well, one, they're adults now at this point. So it's like if you're trying to make some kind of comment of like it's hard to leave if you have kids, because it's like, I mean, it's hard to leave when you have kids regardless, but like even if you're married, if you're not married, if you have kids together, if it would be difficult regardless because ugh, I don't know, it was just genuinely unnecessary. That's also just not a good reason. I'm sorry to say, like I understand it complicates things when you have children, but at the end of the day, the children, it's complicated for them regardless because either they're witnessing their parents in a bad relationship staying together, or they have to deal with like like the, also like you're literally on TV, like this is public information. This, well, when you produce the children, it's hard. It's like if you get divorced, you don't get divorced. Your their dad's infidelity is a storyline on television. So like I think whether you guys get divorced or you stay together is really the least of your worries when you're like making this a super public thing. Like it's just so convoluted to me because I'm like, yes, when you have children, it complicates things, but you're literally on a television show. Um, and it's all out there. It's all out there. So I think like regardless, the children are going to have to deal with some kind of consequences, and I honestly think that their parents being divorced would be better than like watching a very messy divorce, or like a very messy relationship happen on TV and have a bunch of people like give their opinions on, like that seems worse to me. I don't know. um and it like devolves to like the season ends, sorry to jump ahead, but like the season literally ends with like Brian getting a domestic violence charge for putting a tracking device on Brula's car. Like, I think the children, it's complicated enough with them. I really whatever. But from the beginning, Brula doesn't like Joellen because Joellen dares to criticize Brula's husband. Okay, of all the things to dislike Joellen for, I mean, I guess I did say I don't really like the way she meddles in things. Whatever. But I thought it was really interesting when I was rewatching the season because Rula kind of like disappears for a little bit later in the season. And I thought it was really funny because I didn't remember this because obviously I watched the beginning of the season like months ago when it was airing. But from like the second episode, Rula is like not showing up to things she's invited to. So it's just really interesting that kind of from the beginning, she's kind of MIA, not really super involved in the group. And It does escalate in the finale, or not the finale, in the reunion when I believe Joellen is like, You were in," yeah, I do think it was Joellen, and was like, "You were in 3 episodes," or something. I don't know, it gets really heated, and they're like, "Really, you were barely here," and it's like, it did at the time, it felt like she kinda disappeared after the cheating thing was really confronted, because it's introduced from the beginning, but then it's like they go to a Kentucky Derby, and they're on a party bus, and he leaves before they get on the party bus because his mom is sick. Then Joellen gets a text message from her friend who's friends with the alleged mistress, and it's like a video of them together, of the mistress and Brian together that same day. So then it becomes this big thing. And Rula kind of like doesn't really spend time with the group after that. Like they go to this castle. I think they go to like a castle. They do like a little girls trip. They go to a castle. Rula doesn't go to that. And so like she kind of really isn't super involved in the group for a lot of the season, mostly because she's avoiding the confrontation. Honestly, she's mostly avoiding Joellen because she later has a lunch with after she later has a dinner at Alicia's house. It's this whole thing. I also really hate this Brian guy, Rula's husband, for a lot. Like he really irritates me. Like at some point, he's a plastic surgeon, and he's talking about like sometimes he does Ozempic, and then he's losing some muscle mass, so he does this, and it's like I really hated the way that he was just casually talking about like whatever. And then I think Alicia's like, "Oh, I'm jealous," and then her husband's like, "Why? You don't need anything." Uh, I like Alicia. I want to like her husband, but the whole pizza mama equity thing, I don't fuck with that. But let me move on. I'm jumping all over the place. At this like retreat thing that they go to, this is a very that was probably one of my favorite episodes. They like go to this castle, they all wear masks, and they have to like reveal something about like their tragic backstory, and then remove their mask. It was really we got to learn a lot. It also set in motion a lot of the conflict that we would have later in the season. Um, Ashley I very hilariously is like going on The Bachelor. Everybody has a sob story, and I was always worried because I didn't have one, which just means my sob story is like yet to come, and like that means it's like that's gonna happen to me someday. Somebody's gonna die. I haven't experienced it yet. Really, really funny, I have to say. Like, not it's not funny that somebody's gonna die, but that's actually very beautiful. I remember I worked in I worked at when I was in college, I worked in the office of admissions, like as like a student employee. Obviously, I wasn't deciding who got in, but I would interview prospective students. And one of the questions that like they gave us a list of like kind of general ideas. You could ask. It wasn't like a super structured. You had to ask the same thing, but like some questions to like get to know the person a little bit more, right? See whatever. And one of the questions that was on the list was like, "What is like the hardest thing you've been through?" And I would always try to be like, or like the thing you're most proudest of. Like, it doesn't need to be like some big struggle, but like maybe you were really not doing the best in the class and like you turned it around. Like, it doesn't need to be a big like trauma. It can just be like a moment that was a little bit difficult that you overcame, because most people, whether it's like you weren't understanding this chapter of a course and you did a little bit extra work to get through it. Like, it doesn't need to be this very difficult thing, but that was just something that always stood out to me, because I'm like, I don't want to ask some like you don't need to have some kind of tragic or like fascinating life story. So this is very interesting to me that that was hers, especially because I'm like, I feel like you could have like there's plenty of other ways that you could spin things that you've been through. But I do think it's also I'm happy for her. That's very beautiful. Um, I've never had this fear because I'm like, I can say many things that I've been through, none of which are like, I think the thing about me is that I've been to a lot of, I've been to enough therapy where I can like pinpoint things that I went through in my life that were traumatic without it being like, I was about to say this big traumatizing thing. I don't mean it that way. I don't mean it that way. I just like I know that there were things that like did traumatize me and were very difficult to go through. But I think like the older I am, the more I'm like I don't view them with this, like, heaviness. I don't really know. I'm not making any sense, but it's just like for me, I'm like I could think of many things and I'm like this was a difficult thing to go through and it shaped me without it being like a thing. You know what I mean? Even I mean the thing is I actually we've lived very different lives because I literally immigrated to a different country at 3 years old. Like that shapes a person. Um I moved a lot as a kid, that shapes a person. I've been through things, so it whatever. I had a lot of medical issues, that shapes a person. So I guess, whatever, I don't understand this, but for me, I'm like, maybe I just have been through things because I'm like, I feel like there's always something that you could like say that you went through that was a little bit difficult without it needing to be this like I've never been through anything difficult in my life. I'm like, I'm glad you feel that way, but that's just not 100% true. I'm sure you have been through difficult things. You've been through something. You were on TV as a young adult. That has to have been difficult. All that scrutiny on you, like I don't know, maybe she's just like or that kind of stuff doesn't bother her, but I'm like, I feel like you could have very easily been like being on TV and like having my virginity talked about so much or being reduced to my virginity so much. Like that was a very difficult thing to go through because I imagine that that would be like, especially because it's like for whatever reason that you like, are a virgin later in life, whatever. Some people it's for religious reasons. For Ashley, she just was like, I haven't like been in the place where I want to do that yet. Like, it wasn't this big thing that she was like saving herself like for a religious reason. It was just like, the circumstances. I just feel like there's something there. It's like you were painted as crazy, like your emotions, even, and maybe you just don't want to rehash the Jared of it all, but it's like that sounds like it was a very difficult thing to go through that you felt very, like, and he even admitted, like, kind of led you on and like clearly liked you and was being unclear. And I'm like, those are difficult things you've been through. You have a sob story, but anyways, I'm sorry. Okay. Back to the to the event. Okay, that's kind of Ashley. Joellen talks about her family and the stuff that I had previously mentioned. Alicia mentions the fact that her dad left them and she was homeless. And Liz immediately is like, "You were never homeless." She gets really like defensive of this, and Alicia's hurt by this. And this later escalates into a bigger thing, because later on the car they're going to Rosie's like Rosie's husband is like he sings Frank Sinatra songs and they're going to one of his concerts or something and they're on the car ride like to the concert because it's in Boston. So they're like in a longer car ride. Anyways, it comes up again and Joellen kind of sides with Alicia. And then Liz gets mad at this because Liz after this, Alicia got mad immediately, like, or not mad, but she was hurt in the moment when Liz was telling her you were never homeless. And because she's like, well, that's how it felt to me as a child. Joellen, that's brought up later when Alicia's not in the room, and Joellen like has a different tune, I guess. So then Liz gets upset when Joellen kind of like defends Alicia when it's Joellen, whatever. Like she gets upset because she feels like Joellen's not being honest. She's like, when we talked about this before, like you agreed that she wasn't homeless. Now you're like super on her side. And the thing is, Joellen and Alicia had a conversation, which is when we find out about like Joellen situation with her mom more in depth. So I think genuinely, I don't feel like Joellen was trying to be like wishy-washy. I think she just genuinely, like when she spoke to Alicia individually, understood like the emotion behind it. And so she was trying to like empathize with Alicia's emotion instead of trying to like nitpick of like, were you technically homeless or this is what people think of? Because here's the thing, I don't know. I think homelessness is obviously like a very or being unhoused, it's like housing insecurity. There are layers to things, obviously, but it's not like she was saying we were living on the street. Like she described the situation exactly how it happened to her. And she said we were left homeless. And while I understand that Liz was trying to be like trying to help her and like not say something that isn't true or to have people get mad at her, whatever her intention was, while I understand that, like at the end of the day, it really, in my opinion, isn't like Alicia was putting on like or exaggerating a story. Like she said exactly what happened. My father left. He took our home. He took all of our belongings. Like or maybe not belongings, but like he took everything basically, and then she never saw her father again. Like she literally explained earlier in a confessional that she's been engaged to her partner for like a while. They got engaged right before she got pregnant or right before she gave birth or something like that. And her daughter's like 9. Like they've been engaged for quite a long time. And she explains that like her dad left when she was younger and it was very difficult for her, and so she's kind of like always been scared of commitment. And it doesn't help that like husband, her partner, whatever, fiance, isn't like splitting finances. She's not on the deed of the house. She doesn't have ownership over this business that she helps run. Like, all of these things don't help her like anxieties and traumas. So anyways, I think Liz was trying to be like, "I don't want you to say something that technically isn't correct," but it was unnecessary in my opinion, because it's like Alicia was just expressing her perspective. I've also seen quite a few people who are like more knowledge on like the different categories of being unhoused, and like somebody like I've seen quite a few TikToks of people being like technically like she was homeless, like that is a category of being like housing insecure. Like obviously you have familial support, but like if you are a child and you have a family home and then you lose your family home because one of your parents left you, and then you have to move in with like a family member, while yes, you were not like on the streets, you did like lose your home in a sense. It is like, um, like I understand Liz's perspective, but I also think there's like a greater. It's like a lot more nuanced, and I think a lot of people like there are a lot of things that people like hear something and they think it's a very black and white situation, when it's like there's actually like layers to things and like nuances to things. So like while no, she wasn't living on the streets. She also never said she was. Like, she wasn't like, "Oh, we lost her home and we had to, like, live on the street." She was like, "My dad left us homeless, so we moved in with my grandparents." And it's like, yes, okay, so then technically you had a house. But whatever. I just think it became this whole technical thing when Liz could have very easily been like, I didn't know that you felt like you were left homeless, like you had familial support or something, like just trying to be like, I that's not like and I understand. I'm being so nitpicky, and I'm like, these fights escalate into something bigger than it needs to be. But it's like, why are these fights escalating into things that bigger than they need to be? It's like whatever. But Alicia is genuinely like my favorite of the housewives. I really felt for her in this moment. Again, I think it's one of those things where it's like I understand Liz's perspective, and I do understand feeling slighted by Joellen in this moment, because Joellen is kind of a pot stirrer, and she does seem like she's like I get it. It did not in this moment to me feel like she was trying to like instigate things. It genuinely felt like she was trying to be like understand Alicia's side because they had just bonded over this. Like it didn't feel calculated to me. But who am I? I don't know. But Liz gets really angry about this. Alicia's really hurt because she's like, why are you telling me about my lived experience and like how I felt and the impact it had on me? And I think it's also just like because we are getting all these confessionals about the way Alicia's like still impacted by this today, and the way that it's like showing up in her present relationship, and like her feeling like she's not getting what she deserves, but being anxious to say something because she like her dad just left her, and like it's clearly something that terminology aside or not, whatever you want to label it, it impacted her deeply, and it has like repercussions to this day. So Liz trying to be all defensive and like specific and be like that's not technically true, it's like, but it impacted her emotionally to this day, so maybe focus on that instead of trying to like police her language, because people on the internet can be like, "Hey, this is not technically correct." I don't think it's necessary for you as a friend in this moment to be like, "You weren't homeless." Like, how is that useful? Like, how is that useful? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like I have a very strong feeling about the word bully, because I think people very often misuse the word bully, and like I just don't think conflict is always bullying. Like people are like, "Oh, I was bullied," when sometimes it's like there was just conflict, there was just tension. You weren't like it, there being tension, a moment of conflict isn't bullying, in my opinion. I think bullying has a very specific definition, and I get frustrated when people misuse the word bullying. When people are like, "Oh, this person's a bully," when they're talking about like oh, this person's being bullied when they're talking about a public figure being criticized. And I'm not talking about like targeted smear campaigns and bots and like people being attacked. I'm talking about just like there are people on the internet where like if you make a video criticizing a public figure, they call you a bully. And I'm not saying me specifically because I don't make that's not really the genre of video that I make on the internet, but like it, it is a video that I consume from time to time. And there's always people who are going to call people who make critical content bullies when it's like you're just criticizing a public figure. Okay, you're not harassing them, you're not like degrading them. Saying, "Hey, I don't like that this person did something," isn't bullying. Like I think there's an overuse of the word bully a lot of the time. But if somebody came to me, a friend of mine, and was like, "I was really like I was bullied in this moment," I wouldn't be like, "Hey, I don't think you were actually bullied," like because that's just not like an appropriate way to like handle somebody opening up about something emotionally, especially when you're all sharing like your traumas. And Ashley just cried about the fact that nothing bad has ever happened to her. Why are you jumping on like and she explains that, like, she's defensive of her family. Liz explains that she's defensive of Alicia's family. So all these things, but I have a soft spot in my heart for Alicia. Okay, she like she's so funny. I love all her little. I love a cracker. I love a horse. Like I love her little mannerisms. I love the way she mispronounces things. I love um her catchphrases. She has like a deep connection to like dolls in a way that is like so heartwarming to me. Like I really feel like you can tell everything that she's been through and how that's had an impact on her. Like I really do genuinely understand why it was so hurtful for that to be Liz's first reaction because you can clearly see in the way a lot of like the way she carries herself in a lot of ways that clearly like this has had an impact on her. So I really just don't anyways, it escalated to an unnecessary thing that it needed to be, but that's a really oh my god, I forgot to mention this. Alicia, another thing I love about her, she has like a fear an anxiety about driving, and she explains that she ran over a woman, and that's just like in one of the first episodes she's like I ran over a woman one time, and the producer's like, "What do you mean you ran over a woman?" And she's like, "Yeah, I ran over a woman." No elaboration. Now she has elaborated on it since like on the internet and on Watch What Happens Live. Basically it's not like she ran over somebody and then kept driving. She like somebody threw themselves in front of her car, and so she kind of hit them, and the woman got up and ran away. So, like, she didn't die, she didn't kill anybody, and, like, she did try to chase after the woman to see if she needed help, but the woman ran away. So it wasn't like she, like, hit somebody with her car and kept driving, and the person was just there unconscious, okay? Which is what it sounded like to me when she's like, "I ran over a woman," so casually. But what she really means is, like, a woman threw herself in front of my car, which does seem very traumatizing. Like, she explains how anxiety-inducing driving is for her, and I really can't blame her, and I myself have had, like, not that kind of situation. But like I have had situations where like certain thing whatever I don't I have certain anxieties in my car because like certain things that have happened to me, and I'm being so vague. Anyways, when I just I don't really I have anxieties about like driving to like for example I have scratched up my car quite a bit when I've been parking to the point where like when somebody is like watching me park. If somebody's in a car, like in the car with me, and I'm parking my car, if there's a car on in my parking garage that's like waiting for me, or like it heightens my emotions and it makes like parking so much more stressful than like me on my own. Like I understand having triggers around the car. I can't imagine somebody literally like I literally am so anxious about hitting like a biker like, all the time, that, like, it genuinely I get so anxious when anybody's on the road. It in and nobody in LA wears a helmet. Then there are people who are just in scooters scooting down the street, no helmet, super fast. Literally, I get so stressed out with things like that with, like, pedestrians and, like, that I really can't imagine. Like, I understand why she has so much anxiety about being in a car, okay? Somebody literally, like, throws themselves in front, like, that would be traumatizing. So, like, I don't know. I have a soft spot for Alicia. I love the fact that she's like, "I love a cracker." I love she's very much like a character, like, I appreciate that. I really like her. She's my favorite of the housewives, and I am on her side. I am on her side in this situation because I while I understand Liz's perspective, and I really like Liz. I'm not trying to hate on Liz. I and I understand her anger towards Joellen specifically. I just do understand when you're, like, opening up about something difficult for somebody to be like, "Actually, you didn't go through that." Like, that would be really hard. Like, that would be really hard. I've had moments where, like, I remember one time I was telling somebody, like, how my college treated me when I was going through a mental health crisis and how, like, emotionally difficult that was for me, and the way they reacted to it, like, genuinely, like, upset me and was very hurtful, and so I understand when you're, like, being vulnerable and you're, like, explaining something that's, like, difficult for you and, like, you've carried it with you and it's had impact, for somebody to, like, be like, "No, that actually that's not what happened," or, like, minimize it or, like, jump to, like, instead of being like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, that sounds difficult," they jump to, like, correcting you or trying to, like, I was basically told by somebody once when I was explaining my the situation with my college that they were like, "Well, you understand that they have to, like, protect themselves, like, if you're, like, a danger to yourself, like, they need to protect themselves from, like, a lie," like, somebody literally, like, basically was like, "Well, you were a liability." Like, they told me that, which is why I then wrote an op-ed for my college newspaper that was like, "I'm not a liability, I'm a human being." Like, genuinely, it's so funny because of, like, I was literally triggered. I remember when I wrote that article and I was designing the newspaper at the time and I submitted it and I was like, "Hey, I have this article that I am thinking of writing." I remember my friend was like, "Why now?" And I was like, "Honestly, I'm in the mood to tell the story." The reality is somebody triggered me because I had told them my story and they basically sided with my college and were like, well, they did what they needed to do according to whatever." So then I got really triggered and I was like, "Fuck you, actually no, they didn't need to do that." Okay. I understand how, like, triggering it is when you're explaining when you open up about something vulnerable. It's not like she's going around constantly talking about this. It's like they were opening up about something and she was like, "This is the hardest thing I've been through." And then she's like, "Actually, you were never homeless." Like, I understand why Alicia was so hurt by that. Anyways, I really love Alicia. Joellen and Rula, their beef the whole time is just that Rula's husband is a scumbag and Rula doesn't want to believe her. And then she starts attacking Joellen. And it's like, uh, you're more mad at the fact that, like, Joellen is like, your husband is a scumbag than the fact that your husband is a scumbag. Like, I can't deal with it. I find Rula so annoying. And peace and love. I wish the best for her. And I understand when you have children, it's hard to, I just, and I also find it frustrating on, like, watching Joellen because I'm like, at some point, girl, you need to realize that it's falling on deaf ears. Okay, move on, move on. Anyways, later in this season, Alicia does, like, propose getting some ownership of Pizza Mama, and I'm really proud. I really liked Alicia's arc. A big thing that happens later in the season is there's tension. I moved on from them, but there's tension between Rosie and Kelsey throughout the entire thing because Kelsey's so upset about Rosie questioning her relationship at all. Mind you, she was correct. She used the wrong word. It's not polygamy. Nobody's married here. But, like, she wasn't wrong that they were not in a monogamous relationship. Okay, so Kelsey taking such offense to the question of, like, "Hey, I thought you had another partner," when she did in fact have another partner, baffling to me. Nobody was saying anything about your relationship that was, like, false or inflammatory. Like, maybe she was judging you a little bit, but, like, the way she then, like, Rosie was, like, not even being super judgmental. The way that she was then, like, the way she then responded to her, in my opinion, was out of line. Okay, she, like, began to attack her. She is criticizing like, she's being so nitpicky. She's like, "You got fired from that job." Rosie's like, "No, I didn't. I went on medical leave. Like, I wasn't fired. I didn't sleep." Like, like, it's like she's hurt by Rosie questioning her relationship that she suddenly needs to like smear Rosie's character. She's like, "You had an affair with an assistant coach. You were fired from your last job. You like everybody knows you were fired." And she's like, "No, I went on medical leave because like I had like intestinal issues that I don't want to talk about my intestinal issues, but like no, I didn't get fired." And it's like, what if she did get fired? What the hell does it have to do with you? Like that just makes it seem like you're really defensive of your relationship for what? It was so unnecessary. So anyways, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but like it escalates to this thing. She's like starts questioning. Rosie's talking about they're remodeling the house, and Kelsey's like the square footage, this that, and she goes to her house. Oh, and before this, also by the way, Kelsey. Another thing Kelsey doesn't like about Rosie is that Kelsey did Rosie's hair, and Rosie didn't tag her on Instagram, and that's like a big thing they fight on a boat. And Ashley's like, "What can we do to fix this? Can she tag you now?" Like after the fact, it was so funny. She was just trying to make the peace, keep the peace. And anyways, at some point, literally, she comes to her house and she's like with a fake siren, and she's like, "I'm the house police. I'm. It's not." She like is trying to poke fun at her when they don't have that kind of rapport. Like if I was Rosie, would also be upset because it's like, what the fuck do you mean that you've like consistently been like trying to attack my character because I dared to like ask a question about your relationship? You've been like attacking my character, saying I got fired, saying this, that, and the other. Like she's been saying horrible things about her, trying to discredit her and like disparage her in a bunch of different ways. And then she comes to her house all jokey, jokey, like haha, and the square footage of your house. Like I would also, if I was Rosie, feel like that was like another jab because it's like it's not like we've been cordial and then you're just making a friendly haha joke. It's like you've been really mean to me and now suddenly you're like haha publicly like on a loudspeaker in this neighborhood being like that's I would be annoyed too. I would be annoyed too, and it escalates. And I will say I don't like that Rosie was like you suck dick for a career. Okay, that's like whatever. The man is the enemy here for dating somebody who's 20, whatever. He's at fault. It's not, but I do understand, and I really like Rosie was so right when she's like, "You're making fun of my marriage, like you don't have a husband. You're making fun of my house, you don't have a house. Like you're making fun of my career, like you're questioning my career, you don't have a career." Like I would understand why Rosie like, this was it just made no sense, and she calls her a slam pig, and then later, once again, Kelsey tries to, like, poke fun at it by, like, coming to trivia night at Aubrey's, which is the coffee house that Jared and Ashley own, with, like, a sash that says, like, Miss USA's, like, slam pig USA, Miss USA Miss USA slam whatever, slam pig something, and she's making a joke out of it, and it's just, like, this thing where, like, I understand why Rosie would be so offended because it's, like, from the beginning, like, apparently off camera, Joellen's, like, making disparaging comments about her and children not liking her. Then you ask a question and, like, maybe it's a little bit shady, maybe it's not, okay? But even if it was shady, what she was met with was disproportionate. I also completely forgot to mention this, like, I kinda mentioned it, but, like, there's a whole subplot where, like, Liz has a friend named Dino who she and Kelsey fight over this because there's like rumors that Dino and Liz had something, and Liz gets really offended by this, and then Kelsey later is like, maybe you shouldn't be hanging out with Dino because of the ongoing, and Liz gets really mad, and she's like, ongoing what? There is no ongoing, blah 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 blah, and she gets really upset. Okay, she's like, there is no ongoing, and then Kelsey's like, you didn't let me finish. Like I was gonna say ongoing like rumors. I'm not saying whatever. They squash the beef. Kelsey explains that she has history with Dino and she has very negative associations with Dino. So like, and again, it's like, okay, the men are the problem here. The Liz Dino allegations. I'm like, why was Dino messing with like a young 20-year-old girl to the point where she has such bad associations with him that she's like, maybe you shouldn't be around Dino. He's not. I, the men are the problem here. What else did I want to talk about? There's a whole subplot. It's really brief, but like Liz is formulating. which again, I'm like, well, we're never gonna get a conclusion to that. I say I don't live in Rhode Island, but like she and Dolores from the Real Housewives of New Jersey, I believe. I know her from the Traders. She was on the Traders. She's like a friend, and she's in a few episodes. And they were like formulating a cannabis gummy to help with like menopause symptoms. And we find out the Rhode Island was the first state to legalize protections for menopausal women. That's great. I love that. Shout out to Rhode Island. But I don't know. I don't know if I have anything else I wanted to say. I think that's all I had to say. I've been recording for quite a while. Sorry about my hairstyle changing halfway through and like whatever. I really appreciate you tuning in. Maybe if I forgot to mention something, I'll talk about it very briefly in my next episode. I'm excited for season 2. I'm bummed that Liz isn't going to be there. Like of all the people they had to get rid of Liz, I liked Liz. In the reunion, she said something that was so powerful. She said, "You embody something that my soul rejects." That was so powerful. Anyways, that's all I have to say about the Real Housewives of Rhode Island season 1. I'm sorry if I forgot to mention anything. I had quite a few technical issues recording this. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your patience. Next episode will be out shortly after the Love Island finale, so Monday or Tuesday for my final Love Island recap, and then next week, probably around the same time this episode's going out, I'll have a Big Brother 28 week 1 episode, and then every Friday, Saturday going forward, I will be having a Big Brother 28 weekly recap, along with the occasional episode about something else. But thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. You'll hear from me soon.